What's the creepiest thing you've ever witnessed? This actually happened last night. Me and my friend were walking home from a party, and we passed a generally abandoned campground. We heard a dog barking, which was unusual since it was 1 in the morning. The bark sounded weird though. It kept persisting, until we both realized what it actually was. It was a guy imitating a dog's bark. We heard insanely aggressive crunches coming from the woods, so we booked it back to my friend's house. Maybe not the creepiest thing ever, but it really freaked us out. This sounds like my worst nightmare. Caregiving. Night shift. Got a complaint around 3 AM about screaming and banging. Cool. Someone with Alzheimer's is sundowning. Let me redirect them. I get on the elevator to the 4th floor. As I approach the floor I hear this wailing and shrieking, like a banshee or a witch. And she is just slamming her walker on everything. I get out. Immediately confronted her. Gently suggested, let's go back to your room. Have some water. Maybe use the toilet. She is still howling up a storm, like just uncontrollable shrill screaming. Halfway down the hall she immediately goes silent. She slowly picks up her hand and points a bony trembling finger in my direction. He is right behind you. Immediately go into this mode. I get the creepy crawlies all up and down my spine. I pick up the pace. Take her back to her room. Get her into bed. Immediately nope out. A few years ago I was woken up by someone lightly poking me in the forehead at 5 AM. I woke up thinking it was my roommate. But when my eyes started to adapt to the darkness I saw a 2 meters man standing next to my bed. He immediately threw himself to the floor and covered his face. I didn't know what to do, and I couldn't even scream as I was completely shocked. While I was thinking of what to use as a weapon he got up and started running out of the apartment. And for some reason I jumped out right behind him, don't know why I did TBH, and only then I started screaming for help. He eventually made it out of the apartment and started going down the stairs. I gained some sense and realized I probably shouldn't be following this huge, tall, unknown man and ran back to my apartment. One of my roommates was ready to go follow him, bat in hand and all, but we decided it'd be better to just call the police. We never found out who he was or why he was there, and nothing was stolen or taken. Took me a long time to make it through the night calmly again, and even more to feel comfortable at that apartment, especially by myself. When I was barely 19 I got a second job as a bartender in a dive bar. Everyone including my boss knew I was underage, but I was still encouraged to drink. One night, being too young and drunk to know better, I accepted a ride home from a coworker. I was giving him directions to my house. Turn left here, straight at the light, etc. But he started ignoring me and turning right when I said left, then left when I said go straight. And I got scared. Luckily I carried a knife with me at the time. He insisted that he was taking me somewhere nice. I pulled out my knife and held it to his throat until he stopped the car. I got out and ran home. Quit that place right after. Step-grandmother had Alzheimer's. The night before she died from the disease, she was alone in her room. I could hear her talking to other people in the room. She addressed them as dead relatives that she'd forgotten completely in the years prior. She didn't even remember me or my stepmother at this point. Updating them on the current events in the family. I didn't investigate. She was dead when I went in the next morning. Makes my skin crawl right off my body and down the street to think of it. I don't know if it can happen with dementia too, but when my grandpa was in hospice dying of cancer, he was bedridden and almost mute for the last few weeks. Then one night he suddenly sat up in his bed, clearly asked for, and got, a Dr. Pepper, and had the nurse put on a hockey game. It was so sad. My mom was ecstatic. She thought he was making a miraculous recovery. but he was only getting palliative care. And the nurse gently told my mom that they see this often right before death. It's like one last burst of energy and lucidity before they go. When the game was over, they laid him back down. And he couldn't speak and just slept. He died the next day. I'm sorry you had to deal with your step-grandma's death like that. I can't imagine watching someone slip away and then hear them having conversations with people who aren't there. But maybe she knew it was time and came back to herself for a little while. And talking about her family helped her prepare to go. I hope you're doing well these days. My family and I were driving in a thickly wooded area in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Way up there. Like Crystal Falls Iron Mountain area where most of the homes were owned by wealthy, older people who rent out cabins to vacation goers. We had to drive through a long dirt road to get to the main road, and it led only to privately owned property on the other end. It was about 5 AM. We saw a figure in a dark cloak, carrying an old-fashioned lantern. I really don't know why anyone would be roaming around private property in a woods where there's bears and other dangerous wildlife at 5 AM. My dad's family is from the Calumet and Copper Harbor. Beautiful country up there, but desolate at night. One evening we pulled over on a wooded road so my cousin could relieve himself, and we all got out to stretch our legs when we heard a ton of noise in the trees maybe 10 yards away. Big old black bear. Luckily they're not really aggressive most of the time. I think he was just making noise to scare us off. It worked. A homeless guy was under my porch and my mom discovered him humming at 2 AM. Creepy. He was just listening to Kid QDSMH. Couple of years ago I had a dream I was in an elevator and could only press up. One woman and one man were in the back of the elevator. As we ascended, the elevator began shuddering and rattling. It paused. Then I heard something snap. Then it was just the sensation of falling. Falling. The next day, I was in a dilapidated multi-story parking lot in an unknown part of town. I think my boyfriend and I were going to see a play and it was the only parking lot with empty spots left. We got into an old, rusted elevator to go down. One woman and one man were already there. As we descended, the tiny elevator shuddered and then slowly stopped and started several times. We were all looking at each other, uncertain. I couldn't take it anymore. I pressed the button for the next floor. I made my boyfriend take the stairs for the next 5 floors. He was furious. Didn't see the woman and man again that night. Walking out of a breakfast restaurant and saw a van parked next to me. I got in my car and was futzing with whatnot, and 2 middle-aged white guys come out and get in the van, and I think I got a glimpse of a barefoot black kid and a mattress on the floor of the van. They leave and I took down their plates and my GF was like, was that what I thought it was? Anyways, we called the cops and gave them a plate and the description of everyone. Out delivering shopping on Halloween. In Edinburgh, UK. Heard eerie, loud, piercing screams come from the other end of the dark street I was on. 2 little girls exactly alike, dressed as ghouls wearing makeup, came sprinting out of the darkness straight to me. Both screaming. They immediately grabbed my jacket and stared up at me, shouting something about a woman trying to take them away. Then from behind them out of the dark a bedraggled woman came hobbling along. Pale, topless, with sores all over her arms, and tried to pull the 2 girls away from me, stating they were her daughters. I asked the kids where they stayed once I'd gathered my senses and took them home, and phoned the police on this woman, who was covered in sores. She tried to take another child off somebody else, so I grabbed her, and as my hand wrapped around her arm, my finger slipped into one of her large open sores. Luckily somebody nearby let me use their sink to wash my hands. Still had to complete my shift, which was the second most annoying part of this story. This was probably 13-14 years ago. I was working as a delivery driver for an auto parts store and I'm taking a shortcut through a neighborhood. It's during the winter, which, in my state, gets mid-level snow, but it's extremely cold. Suddenly a toddler in just a diaper bursts out of the front door of the house next to me, covering his ears and screaming at the top of his lungs. He runs about 20 feet and disappears into someone else's backyard. I immediately call the cops and start making laps around the block trying to find him because, again, it's winter and the kid's in a damn diaper. Cops show up and take over, but I'll never forget the look on his face or the sound of him yelling. I don't find it that creepy, but my friend at the time had a meltdown over it. It was Halloween night. I was in 4th grade, I think. There was a cat that came up to me in the neighborhood we always trick-or-treated in. I have a huge soft spot for cats. So I pet it for a minute or two, then continue on my way. The cat starts following me. Then more cats start appearing and following me. This herd of cats followed us for multiple blocks, standing a few feet back, making no noise. They don't stop following me, so my friend started freaking out, called me a witch on the verge of tears, then made me call my mom to pick us up. The cats left when my mom drove up. My friend and I were walking back to our dorms from the library and it was getting dark. We started crossing the crosswalk and noticed a guy across from us pushing a stroller. He looked up and waved at us, but none of us waved back because we thought maybe he was waving at someone else. We start crossing and then the guy starts crossing too. When we passed the dude with the stroller, he kept looking at me like he wanted to say hi or something, but just kept staring. When we were finally on the other side, my friend said there was nothing in that stroller. We decided to walk a little faster after that. A former friend and I went into the tunnels of a wash to smoke while waiting for our other friends. We decided to walk through it for a little just to see what we would find. At about 15-ish minutes in, we're approaching another bend and see something in the distance sitting against the wall. We stop and kinda just stare for a bit, thinking it might be a homeless man or something. Whatever it was, it immediately knew we were there. Then we see it lean forward onto its feet and very slowly stand without taking its eyes off of us. It was super skinny and looked completely grey. Couldn't make out any defining physical or facial features. It just looked like a tall, skinny grey man. I definitely didn't like what I saw, and I could tell it surely wasn't welcoming of our presence. It's safe to say we both got the hell out of there pretty quickly. I dunno who or what it was, but I didn't like it.